It's been nearly 4 years since the last big 3D Mario game was released. That's almost the length of my entire life, give or take about a decade and a half. Obviously, by this point, fans are going to be wanting more, or at least something that could hold them over until the next big thing comes.
Enter Bowser's Fury, a brand new side mode to the Switch port of Super Mario 3D World that no one was expecting, but everyone welcomed with open arms. This mode was a large deviation from 3D World itself in its core gameplay, but still kept some of the things that distinguished it from other games. I personally liked it a lot, and have 100%ed it twice already, once on launch day and once in preparation for this video. But there are quite a few things that I experienced that weren't exactly enjoyable. This game is great, but it's got a few things that keep it from being perfect, so let's talk about it. The story of Bowser's Fury starts with Mario taking a stroll through the Mushroom Kingdom, when he happens to come across a ton of bird shit on the ground. He then proceeds to take off running through it, getting it all over his shoes in the process until he reaches the first letter of his own name drawn out in the bird's excrement. But then, out of nowhere, the M expands, with Mario falling through in the process.
I'm starting to think this isn't bird shit.
Anyways, after that, he lands headfirst inside an area not seen in any other prior Mario game, known as Lake Lapcat. The weather is not the best when Mario arrives though. A thunderstorm is raging and visibility is pretty low. But after pushing through the rain for a bit, the main antagonist, Fury Bowser, appears, which is an extremely large, seemingly malice-ridden version of Bowser. He then starts to wreak havoc on the surrounding area and on Mario. However, in the distance, a cat shine, the game's main collectible, becomes visible. After collecting this, Fury Bowser is put at bay, but only temporarily. After this event, Mario runs into Bowser Jr., who ends up begging him to help change his dad back as a last-ditch effort. It seems like Mario's not having it during this initial conversation though.
You better wipe that look off your face real quick.
After more conversation, we come to find out that it was actually Bowser Jr.'s fault that Bowser ended up like this. From what I understand, he put too much evil black paint on Bowser and he got all big and scary. However, after some convincing, Mario finally ends up agreeing to help, and the two team up for the adventure. After all of that, the player is thrown directly into the gameplay, where they are basically free to explore all of the area available to them. Not a lot of story happens after this until the ending, but I'm not going to spoil that here. If I were to compare Bowser's Fury to any other Mario game, I would probably say it's a mix between Odyssey and 3D World in terms of its design. In terms of the controls, the mid-air dive from Odyssey returns with a slight nerf to the distance. The triple jump is also not present like in 3D World, and I personally think it would have fit great into this style of game. But what am I gonna do? Do I look like a Nintendo developer to you? One thing that's better overall, however, is that you can skip just about every cutscene in the game. They should just add this feature to every Mario game in the future. Not everyone cares about the cutscenes, or it may just be that they've already seen them before. Additionally, Bowser's Fury adopts the open world collectathon type feel of Odyssey, and combines it with the linearity of 3D World. The world is separated into multiple distinct areas, and the transition between them is seamless, as nearly the entire game takes place inside of one level. Each area of the world is somewhat of a pseudo-stage, with a linear path of obstacles to follow to the end, which is usually the lighthouse. However, the journey to the lighthouse is not the only thing you'll be doing in each area. There are a total of 5 cat shines to collect in each, and they all correspond to a specific mission that you must complete within that area. In every single stage, there will always be a shine corresponding to getting to the lighthouse, and there will always be a shine to collect 5 cat shine shards, which obviously create a full cat shine when they are all obtained. But there are a variety of other missions that can also show up in each area, such as collecting a series of blue coins within a time limit, finding a key to unlock the caged cat shine, fighting a boss, or even chasing, attacking, and defeating a shadow version of Luigi that's made up of the black goop that is infecting Bowser and the surrounding area.
Congrats on your new game, Mario. Care to give us any insight as to why you are chasing and committing acts of violence against your own brother in the game? Sorry folks, he seems to be a little camera shy.
In addition to the 5 cat shines in each stage, there are also quite a few extra ones that you can find spread across Lake Lapcat that aren't exactly attached to the stages themselves. These can include clouds that shoot you up into the sky to complete a challenge, timer challenges that set up obstacles to a cat shine, and even some where you have to ride Plessy across some generated platforms to reach the end before time runs out. Wait, I haven't even mentioned Plessy yet. Plessy is your main form of transportation across long distances, basically allowing you to get from area to area much faster than if you would have gone on foot. She is super satisfying to control as well, with an extra ability not present in 3D World allowing you to dive under the water and jump back out with a boost of speed. Plus, the music is always amazing no matter how many times I hear it. Once a certain number of cat shines are collected, the nearby Giga Bell will awaken. This is a giant version of the Super Bell that turns Mario into an enormous powered up version of the cat suit. I'm sure you've already seen that though. Regardless, I'm going to be saving the Giga Bell shenanigans until later, so hold that thought. Every 5 to 6 minutes during normal gameplay, rain will start to fall on Lake Lapcat, and ominous music will begin to fade into earshot. Suddenly, lightning will strike and the world will instantly turn to night. This is where Fury Bowser will crash into view, wreaking havoc on the entire area with his fireballs and backspikes. The bad thing about putting his appearances on a timer, however, is that sometimes he'll show up at the most inconvenient time, and sometimes you'll be standing around waiting for him to show up because you have nothing else to do. This is the case with Fury Blocks, which are special bricks that can only be destroyed with Fury Bowser's fire. They are always the last cat shine to collect in every single area, meaning that you can very well be stuck waiting next to the blocks for Bowser to come back for up to 5 minutes because he's stuck on that timer. It would be so much better if you could at least get Fury Bowser to show up on command, but it seems like you can only do that if you happen to have a Bowser amiibo. Why would a feature this useful be locked behind an extra purchase that has no other uses other than sitting on your shelf? Regardless, I'm not saying you should be able to control whether he appears or not. That should be inevitable. I'm just saying you should be able to activate something in-game and not with an amiibo that makes him show up immediately so you aren't stuck waiting on him. Honestly, I'm fine with him showing up at inconvenient times. It can add some extra challenge to the game that you weren't really expecting, and it keeps you on your toes. It's also pretty easy to get rid of him once he actually shows up. Every time you collect a cat shine, enter a sub area, or die, the world will reset back to daytime. Going back to the gameplay when Fury Bowser actually is present though, I want to talk about how laggy it can get during these sequences. The amount of action going on screen can really take a toll on the Switch's hardware, and it shows. At some points, the frame rate will drop so low that the game will look like it's in slow motion. It's understandable though, the Switch was underpowered even at its release back in 2017. Let's just hope that rumored revision lets us play this at a constant 60 frames per second.
It's okay. Take your time.
Moving on though, I want to go back to talking about the Giga Bells, specifically the boss fights that follow their collection. The fights against Fury Bowser are definitely way better than I thought they would be. I've come to expect large-scale battles in games to be much more cinematic and easy than this, with lots of quick-time events and mid-fight cutscenes. I'm glad they didn't decide to take that route with the Fury Bowser battles. These fights are extremely involved and it's actually not too hard to die in them. It's also super satisfying to land hits on Bowser, and there are a variety of ways to damage him. You can even lose your Super Saiyan cat suit if you take damage during the fight, meaning you'll have to figure out other ways of damaging Bowser that aren't claw swipes, such as throwing his back spike back at him and then ground pounding on his stomach when he gets knocked over. I really like how there isn't one single way to defeat him, and you're encouraged to experiment based on the situation. Next up, let's talk about coins. Luckily, they stopped giving you an extra life at 100 coins for this game. Heck, they removed lives entirely. They must have watched my video from October explaining how lives are useless in video games today.
Are you seriously shamelessly promoting your content again?
Every time you collect 100 coins in this entry, you are awarded with a random power-up, which then goes into your power-up reserve box. I'll discuss what I think about this method of storing power-ups in a bit, but for now, I'll just explain how it works. At any time during normal gameplay, you can press up on the D-pad and select any power-up you have stored and give it to yourself. You can store up to 5 of each power-up. Other than that, coins are completely pointless other than to guide the player in the right direction during platforming and exploration, which I still think is a very important function of coins, so it wouldn't be the greatest idea to remove them entirely. Giving them more functionality in the game though would be great, but it's so short, only totaling around 5 hours of gameplay at 100%, that there's not much value you can add to coins outside of the power-up rewards. But like I said, it's better than having lives, which wouldn't have much purpose in this scenario anyway. Finally, let's talk about the level of difficulty in Bowser's Fury. It's too easy. Don't get me wrong, the game is really fun, but you're probably only going to die by touching lava since it insta-kills you. In any other scenario, you can simply just pull up your handy item reserves whenever you take damage and choose from the large selection of free power-ups at your disposal at any given time. It's not even like it's hard to build up a big collection of these power-ups. They are everywhere, and they respawn whenever you leave an area. Not to mention the already mentioned fact that you get one after every 100 coins. You can also find them hidden inside walls if you use Bowser Jr. to paint the power-up into existence. The amount of power-ups you can hold needs to be lowered, or there needs to be less power-ups available to the player throughout the world in general. Speaking of Bowser Jr. though, he can also assist you in defeating enemies if you turn on that option. This also makes the game much easier. However, since it's an optional feature, I don't really mind it. It's obvious that it was only put into place to make the game more accessible to casual players, which I'm totally fine with. Like I said in the beginning, I think Bowser's Fury is a great bite-sized adventure that is definitely worth a play if you're already planning on buying the 3D World port. However, because of its short length, I wouldn't say it's exactly worth the buy if that is the only part of the port you plan to play. Also, I almost forgot, can we take a moment to recognize how good the music is in this game? It's definitely my favorite game soundtrack in years, and I catch myself with the tune stuck in my head all the time. I only wish it was a longer game overall so we could get even more tracks like these. In closing though, I believe Nintendo's attempt at something new with this side mode paid off pretty well, and I'd love to see more of this style of gameplay with the few tweaks I mentioned. A truly open world and a full-length 3D Mario sounds like an amazing step forward in the series, and I'm excited for what the future may hold for this Red Plumber.